¿Cómo estás, Alisa? Te quería preguntar primero, ¿cómo fue tu ingreso profesional al mundo del cómic?
um,
You
I,
speak Spanish.
I, not anymore. Okay. When I was 3, my family lived in Mallorca. And so as a 3-year-old, I spoke Spanish. I understood Spanish. And then I forgot it. And then I went to school. So if you speak slowly, I'll probably be able to understand, but I'll take the translation just in case. And
Awesome.
I am so sorry, I cannot respond in Spanish. Es muy difícil para mí.
Okay.
Pero yo entiendo cuando personas hablan muy despacio.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So you're asking how I got my professional start. Oh, how long an answer do you want? Basically, I was a comic book reader. I loved comics. Everyone I knew, when I was little, comics were in newsstands and in the little candy shops around the corner. And so you didn't have to go to a specialty shop for comics. And so let's see, I discovered, the kids' comics. Then I discovered horror comics, and mainly House of Mystery, House of Secrets, also Charlton. Later, I learned, I discovered Eerie, Creepy, and Vampirella. And so I loved them, with a ferocity that only other comics people can understand, that it struck some chord in me that felt like this is a complete pleasure, especially horror with humor, which was very much Cain and Abel, the hosts of House of Mystery and House of Secrets. All right, so this is the first thing you need to know about me. And I loved Conan and a bunch of other stuff as well. So flash forward many, many years, I was finishing up graduate school at Columbia University. I was doing a fiction master's. And everybody there went to, wait, can you move over so I can see you as well? I can see there, I'm seeing you like this. Yeah, okay. So, so everyone at that time was getting jobs in literary publishing. ¿Me entiende? Oh, no.
Absolutely.
So I also was looking at literary jobs, but because I also read comics and romance, I decided to try for a job also in comics and romance. And I wrote to Marvel and to DC Comics at that time. I think it was 1990. They were both in New York City, which is where I was living. And Marvel didn't get back to me, but DC did. And it was a big snowstorm, and I came in, trudging through the snow in my, interview shoes, and get there. And Kevin Dooley was the only person there, and he said, "You're out of luck, kid, but I'll definitely put in the word that you showed up for the interview despite a blizzard." So I went, I came back, and then I was interviewed by Dick Giordano and Michael Urie. And I remember that they asked me, not just, obviously I had some skills with writing and with editing, not so much I had one art class that I'd taken, and that was it in college. And so they said to me, well, what comics do you read? And I realized that I had screwed up, because I was not reading DC Comics by and large. I was reading X-Men at that time. But other than that, I was just not reading comics. And I said, okay, do you want to know the truth? My favorite comics were DC Comics growing up, House of Mystery and House of Secrets, but you don't publish them anymore. And they said, oh, kid, we've got a job for you. Karen Berger does all the weird horror, and she does stuff with those characters. And she's looking for a new assistant. So I went away and I came back, and I had my second interview with Karen Berger. Okay, I'll take a pause. Sorry, that's a very long answer. All right, so the first thing is, in that first interview, they gave me samples of comics, including The Sandman. And I became obsessed with the Sandman. I couldn't wait for my second interview, so I went to a comic book store and bought all the issues that, so far, so that I could read, because I thought maybe I won't get the job and I need to know everything, from the series. So then I had an interview with Karen, and at that time she was pregnant with her first child. And we had a really good interview. And we went out to lunch, we came back, and then suddenly I see her kind of frowning at me and looking unhappy. And I thought, oh, why is she all of a sudden unhappy? Everything's been good. And I realized that she had a headache and she's pregnant. I don't know why. I got intuitive. I said, your head hurts, doesn't it? She said, yeah, I have a little headache. I said, oh, and you can't take aspirin. And without thinking, I reach across the desk and I start to rub her temples. And then I thought, yeah, I probably shouldn't do that. I didn't even ask. I was just like, yeah. So anyway, despite what you would think, I got the job.
Bueno, fuiste la tercera editora de Sandman, creo que entraste en Estación de Nieblas, si no me equivoco. ¿Cómo surgió esa historia con Gabe? ¿Cómo se elaboró? ¿Y cómo fue el arte de Mike Triggenberg? Que creo que fue su despedida de la serie, esa fue su última saga, creo.
I didn't work directly with Mike Dringenberg. I certainly was. So in the beginning, I'm going to go back to what an assistant editor did. And in the beginning, of course, I didn't know what I was doing. So I had to learn. And the two people who taught me were Karen Berger and Tom Peyer, who was the previous assistant editor. There was Art Young, and then Tom Peyer, and then me. And Tom, who's my editor now at Ahoy Comics, was just such an influence on me and guided me and shaped me, as did Karen. And so one of the first things that you do is you get the script, you read the script, then you send it off to the penciler in the old days, and you would get thumbnails sometimes. And then you would, get the pencils, letter, the script, and it was back then it was done on the boards. Send it off to the inker, to the colorist, and through all of these processes, you're helping the editor keep everything on schedule, and also trying to notice if things, are, if the art is diverging wildly from the script. And then in the beginning, it would be talking to Karen Berger and saying, how are we going to, I just want to alert you to this. Or so I started, I guess, with Season of Mists. And I wasn't really actively talking with the artist until Kelly Jones. So I didn't have any direct contact with Mike Dringenberg. We just kind of missed each other.
A Game of You es una historia de mujeres adelantada a su época porque tiene elementos de género y de inclusión. ¿Cómo se originó todo eso? ¿Cuál fue la génesis?
So I think that Neil was, just in terms of what interested him, was ahead of his time with A Game of You. And I think Karen Berger her whole approach to editing was to find out the stories that people wanted to tell and really to help them tell it. But she was like a literary editor. So she did not impose her will. Once she decided that she was going to work with a writer, she really wanted to bring out their vision. So I don't, obviously there were sometimes little things or words. We started out, Vertigo was not Vertigo. Vertigo were just, the collection of books that Karen and the editors she supervised were editing. And so at that time, I remember that the Curtis King, the cover editor, was always saying, you guys in your group, you're always sneaking nipples in. Nipples. I always have to be on the lookout for a nipple. But of course, if you look at the covers, and especially Dave McKean's covers, they're so much weirder. It's not like, it's not like a slipped nipple. It's like the nipples would be eyes or antenna, or, collaged with typewriter keys. So, sorry, I'm digressing. A Game of You. The title of it, though, I think at that point, so let me try and be coherent. So at this point, I was already fairly established as assistant editor, and I spent a lot of my day talking with Neil. So I would do all the trafficking of books and, calling and saying, hey, where's the artwork or where's the script during the day? And I'd take books down to production. In those days, production was in-house. But after 5, that was the time that I spent a lot of time talking with Neil, who was then living in England and working late. He no longer does any of those things. He doesn't live in England. He doesn't work really late. Well, mostly he doesn't. Sometimes he lives in England. But anyway, so we would, in his midnight and my 6 o'clock, we'd spend a lot of time talking. And one of the things he discovered, we were talking about science fiction and his love of, he knew a lot of writers. And at one point I said, what do you think of the writer Robert Sheckley, a science fiction writer? He wrote, he's written a lot of stories that were spun off into movies. The famous one is The 10th Victim. I don't know how to say this in Italian, but it was an Italian film with Marcello Mastroianni and Ursula Andress, that the bra that shoots, from Austin Powers, that's based on that. Anyway, so Neil said, Robert Sheckley was, a brilliant writer when he was younger and doing short stories. But then, I think he really kind of went into a very strange place where he forgot what was holding all the stories together. And I think it might have been drugs. And I said, he's my father. And I think Neil said something like, well, kill me now. And I said, no, I agree with you. But he was thinking about, I think, a Sheckley story called The Game of X, or A Game of X, when he titled A Game of You.
Okay. Bien. Fuiste la responsable de que Matthew, el cuervo, no muriera al final de Sandman. ¿Qué recordás de esa anécdota?
This is so funny. Okay, so somebody said that. So I have a son who's now, an adult, but at the time was a little baby, named Matthew. Not named after Matthew the Raven, but also named Matthew. It was the only name my then husband and I could agree on. And so when, I guess, there was this rumor that Neil was going to kill Matthew the Raven, and that I said to him, don't do it because my son is named Matthew. So I explained that this is a rumor. It's completely untrue. I would never interfere with a writer's creative process in this way. And it's, my child is not a character that's a raven. And I was so amused, I told it to Neil maybe a year or 2 ago. And Neil said, Alisa, don't you remember? You asked me not to kill Matthew the Raven, and I did, which turned out to be a very good thing. I said, this is why we need friends that remain in our lives for years and years, because I have no memory of this whatsoever. Joan Didion says we must keep journals in order to remember the people we used to be. Otherwise, they'll come knocking on our door at 3 a.m. and saying, hey, remember me? But obviously, I forgot what, 30-year-old Alisa had asked.
¿Por qué crees que Sandman sigue tan vigente en las nuevas generaciones?
Well, I think 2 reasons. One is it has mythic underpinnings, and myths survive. They survive everything. They kind of, they're the bones of all our stories. And Neil is just a quintessential myth maker and myth teller. But above and beyond, he writes from the grit in his oyster. When you write out of something that's authentic and emotional and personal, I think that endures. And so many of the Sandman stories are about storytelling. They're about the creative process and wanting to be famous and, watching a mentor sort of fall out of favor. I'm thinking of Calliope and the Erasmus Fry and Richard Maddock and all of those stories. I think that they are all written from deeply personal places as well. And so that's the alchemy. It's something timeless and universal and something deeply specific and personal.
¿Cuál crees que fue el legado de Vertigo Comics para el cómic para adultos?
Oh, this is a good question. I think in some ways we've moved away from the legacy of Vertigo because it was very much about creator rights and about giving creators more and more of a share in what they create and giving them freedom. And Marvel went in this, direction of really feeding into films and creating this connected universe, which is great in its way, but it's not the same as really growing the quirky individual. You own this model. And DC also moved away. I mean, for me, Ahoy Comics, which is the company that Tom Peyer co-founded, is a big part of the legacy. I mean, it's not a huge company, but I think that the work that it's producing is incredible. And I think any time that people are allowing for artists to draw in ways that don't look all cookie cutter, typical superhero shapes, I think anytime you're getting stories that go into a kind of strange and subversive place, I mean, I think that's all, part of the Vertigo legacy. But, it's like the 20s, the 1920s kind of rhymed with the 1960s. And other decades don't have quite the same quality of those rebellious decades. So I'm not sure, besides Ahoy, that I'm aware that there is, this big movement in comics, some big company that's Vertigo's legacy. That said, I mean, artists and writers are still talking about the books that were produced in the late 80s and 90s and on by Vertigo. So maybe it's more a legacy of inspiring individual creators.
Okay. Bien. Como editora, ¿qué consejo le podés dar a quienes comiencen, a quienes se quieren dedicar a la edición y a los editores?
Oh, so you mean editorial. So like a lot of people, I edit and I also write comics. So and back when I started out, that was not frowned on. Everybody was, Dick Giordano was the vice president, and he was helping us ink issues of Sandman. And as a little assistant editor, I would, give him feedback, and he would say, "Okay." Um, Advice for people who are editing. Well, I think that it helps as an editor. It actually helps to have done creative work yourself. Because if you're asking, for example, for a writer to give you a very worked out, detailed synopsis of something and tell them, give me a complete synopsis for the first 3 issues, and then please plot out the first year of story arcs. You have to understand, if you're a creator and you speak with other creators, that for many writers, that means writing everything or writing as much as they can and then bullshitting and making stuff up. If you've never done any drawing or tried to draw, and then you might not have a sense of how tiring it can be, and how I mean, I'm not a good example because I'm not a good artist, but maybe then just learning and listening what is involved in the process. What else? I mean, I think the greatest gift you can give people as an editor is to tell them what's working and what you like, as well as to tell them what you would like more of, or what you think might need to be cut for the sake of the overall piece. It's a lot of people believe that being a professional means that you should just get criticism, and I just think that's not the way humans work. We do better creative work when we feel that someone is appreciating, what is good. And yeah, so I guess that's my editor advice.
Bien, sabemos que sos una escritora exitosa. ¿Cuáles son tus nuevos proyectos?
Oh, thank you. Well, I've been collaborating a lot with Maurice, the Belgian artist. Um, we were originally paired up for Mystic U, which was a project I did for DC with Zatanna and a sort of magical school, and it didn't work out. We didn't end up doing. Mike Norton, who's wonderful, did that with me, but Maurice and I decided to keep collaborating, and so we've done Guilt, which is I call it Sex in the City meets the Golden Girls. It's about a time-traveling woman in her 70s and her home healthcare aide in her 50s, and they both go back to 1974, where Hildy is now in her 30s, and Trista is a 9-year-old with the mind of a cynical chain-smoking 50-year-old. So that's one project that we've got, and we're working on something that I can't talk about yet. And we've got a cryptid story that's about to come out in the new anthology, and we've done two. Our story is coming out in issue 2 of Cryptids, and it's called Chupahuawa, and Alain Morissette came up with the title. We do a lot of back and forth collaboration because I love, when I'm writing comics, what I really love to do is to collaborate. I want to talk with the artist. I want to understand how they're thinking about something and how they're approaching it. And especially, somebody asked me about writing horror and writing comedy. And I said, horror is like scrambled eggs or punk rock. It's really accessible. It's easy to achieve for me. Comedy is it's like a Fleetwood Mac song where you think it's simple, but actually it depends on this really elaborate finger plucking. And so you really need, I think, to work closely with an artist to get the best results, unless you're Mark Russell, in which case, you're Mark Russell.
¿Seguís leyendo cómics? ¿Qué cómics estás leyendo? ¿Qué cómics te gustan de la actualidad?
Yes, I do. I sort of go in bursts, and I'm trying to think what's the last thing that I haven't read anything. I should be better prepared for this. So lately I've been rereading Sandman for my Sandman podcast, Endless, which I do with my friend Lani Diane Rich. So we go through all the comics. We also did the Netflix series, a little compare and contrast. So I've been rereading Sandman. And I also did a deep dive. My local comic book store has a lot of the old House of Mystery, House of Secrets, also Midnight, what's it called? Midnight Tales from Red Circle. So I've been reading the old stuff, but I really would love it if people would tell me what I should be reading right now. I mean, besides, like, I'm reading the Ahoy comics. I love Mark Russell's writing, everything he does. I love reading Stuart Moore and Tom Pyer's work. But yeah, I need for you guys to tell me what I should be reading now.
Algo que quiero recomendar, yo leo El Departamento de la Verdad, de James Tynion.
Oh, The Department of Truth. Wait, who's that by? Is that? Oh, James Tynion. Yes, James Tynion the third. I met him when I was doing Mystic U, and I was doing the Convergence stories. Yeah. Okay, cool. I will definitely. He's a great writer. I will look that up. Thank you.
¿Viste la serie de Sandman en Netflix? ¿Qué te pareció? Tuvo algunos cambios. ¿Y qué esperas de la temporada 2 que adapta Estación de Nieve?
I'm excited. I'm in contact with Neil, so I often get sneak advance peeks at things. I mean, not now because of the writer's strike, so there's been zero stuff coming my way, nothing happening. But it's been really interesting because with Sandman, I mean, this is sort of what the podcast is about. Sandman has changed a lot from the comic to the screen, and there are, lots of reasons for the ways it has changed. But I have changed. So when I first was reading Sandman, I was in my 20s. And one of the first things I realized rereading is that the Endless are in their 20s. You think of them as immortal, but they're also immortal, and psychologically and emotionally, they're very much in their 20s. It's more apparent to me now that my kids are in their 20s, because I think, oh, this kind of ongoing sibling rivalry, this kind of cynicism, there's a youthful sheen to the cynicism that you get in your 20s. And I think perhaps things soften as you get older. So I'm fascinated by the storytelling changes, and also by, the different ways that the stories hit me. What else can I tell you? I mean, obviously you're in your 20s and you look at Sandman and you think, oh, you're so sexy. Well, maybe not you, but I definitely did. And now, of course, I look and I think, oh gosh, I just really want to sometimes shake you and stand you up, and suppose I have death's attitude towards him now.
Bien. ¿Le querés dar un mensaje a tus fans de Argentina y de Sudamérica? A los fans de Vértigo.
I have not been to Argentina, but I was, when I was 18, I was on a program in Israel, and we had people from all over the world. So we had people from Argentina and Uruguay. Remember, that was the first time I discovered dulce de leche, which was not known in the States at that time. It's a place I would love to go. I think for, lots of reasons, but also maybe to revive my ailing Spanish.
Bueno.
Oh, thank you. I want to say something, and, tengo vergüenza. But muchas gracias a ustedes. And yeah, I look forward to what are you going to do with all these interviews?
Lo que vamos a hacer, las voy a subir en varias páginas. Primero las vamos a subtitular en castellano y las vamos a subir en las páginas de fans de Argentina y de Sudamérica. Pero primero hay que subtitularla. Así que bueno, igual te voy a ir informando cada vez que vaya haciendo algo, te lo diré.
No, you better give it to me. Oh, thank you. Send me links, please. And yeah, and if people have questions, then, I'm happy to follow up. So thank you very much. It's nice to talk about the old days.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.